The doctors at the hospital have a chart. It says my heart stopped for 21 minutes, 21 minutes of clinical death. But their chart is wrong. It wasn't death. It was the truest life I've ever known. In those 21 minutes, I stood before Jesus Christ, and He showed me what is coming for the world. He showed me a beautiful ancient hall in the Vatican, and a gun hidden beneath the robes of a man who had sworn to serve God. The gun was aimed at the new Pope, Leo XIV, but what Jesus told me would happen. After the shot is fired is the reason I came back. But before I tell you who was holding that weapon, you need to understand why they want him gone. My name is Harold. I'm 86 years old. For most of my life, I was a carpenter. I'm not a scholar or a theologian. I've been a simple Catholic man my whole life, content to sit in the pews and live my quiet faith. I never thought I was important enough for God to notice in a special way. I was wrong. Jesus showed me that the greatest battles aren't fought in public, and He chose me to bring back a warning. This message isn't just for me. I believe Jesus sent me back to share it with you. If you feel that something big is about to happen in the world, please subscribe and turn on your notifications, because you need to hear the rest of this. And tell me in the comments, do you believe that the prayers of one good person can truly shake the foundations of darkness? What Jesus showed me next proves it. To understand the weight of His words, I have to take you back to that Tuesday afternoon, to the moment my heart stopped beating. To understand why Jesus would show a vision of the Vatican to a simple man like me, you have to see the life I lived. For over 50 years, my hands were rough from working with wood as a carpenter. My world was built on simple, solid things: the love of my wife, Eleanor, raising our 3 children, and the predictable comfort of Sunday Mass. I've been a Catholic my whole life, but not the kind who reads deep theology. I was just a man in the pews, content with my quiet faith, praying for the Holy Father as I was taught. I thought I understood my place. I always saw the Pope as a distant, holy figure, a man on a balcony in Rome. I respected the office, but I never truly thought about the man. To me, the power of the Church was in the grand pronouncements, the ancient rituals, the magnificent buildings. I believed the most important things happened on the altar in public view, but Jesus was about to show me the truth. He revealed that the real power, the thing that made the darkness tremble, wasn't in the pageantry. It was in the quiet, secret prayers of a man I'd never met, Pope Leo XIV. That day was just like any other Tuesday afternoon. I was in my old armchair, the one with the fabric worn smooth over decades, reading the newspaper. Eleanor was in the kitchen. I could hear the gentle clatter of her putting away dishes. The sun was warm through the living room window. I felt perfectly normal, content. There was no warning, no premonition of what was coming. I was just an 86-year-old man at the end of a long and simple life, about to turn a page. I had no idea my heart was only seconds away from stopping. Then it happened. It wasn't a sharp pain like a knife. It was a pressure, a heavy, crushing weight that started in my chest and spread through my whole body as if the world itself was sitting on me. I tried to call out to Eleanor, to say her name just one more time, but my lungs wouldn't take in air. No sound came out. The edges of my vision started to turn dark, like ink spilling across the newspaper page. The last thing I remember from inside my own body was the feeling of the paper slipping from my fingers and fluttering to the floor. Suddenly, all the pressure was gone. The weight vanished. I felt a gentle lift, and I was floating near the ceiling of my own living room, looking down. I saw my body, that old, worn-out shell, slumped in the armchair with my head tilted at an awkward angle. I saw Eleanor rush in, her face a mask of pure terror. I watched her grab the phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. I was right there, but she couldn't see me. I felt no pain, no fear, only a strange, calm detachment from the chaos unfolding below me. I watched as the paramedics arrived, their movements fast and professional. They laid my body on the floor and started working. I could hear their voices, clear as a bell. "No pulse," one of them said, starting compressions. They were shouting things, using machines that made loud noises, but it all seemed so distant. I tried to speak, to tell Eleanor I was all right, to tell them to stop, but I had no voice. I was just a silent observer, watching them fight for a life that I had already left behind. It was the strangest feeling in the world. They worked on that old body for a long time. I watched them check their watches. Then one of them looked up, sighed, and said the words, "Time of death, 2:47 p.m. They told me later, after I came back, that my heart had been stopped for 21 minutes. 21 minutes! But for me, time was just beginning. As they started to cover my face, I felt a new sensation. It was a pull, a gentle but insistent drawing away from that room, away from my home, away from everything I had ever known. Something was waiting for me. The frantic scene in my living room simply dissolved. It didn't fade to black. It was more like the world itself became thin, replaced by a perfect silence. The chaos and the fear vanished. I found myself in a gentle, warm darkness that wasn't scary at all. It felt safe. Then I felt a pull, a gentle but insistent drawing toward a single point of light. It grew from a distant star into a sun that didn't burn or blind me. It radiated a feeling, a pure, unconditional love that soaked right through me, healing every worry I'd ever had in my life. I was now standing inside that light. There was no ground, no sky, no walls, but I felt completely held and supported. It was like being suspended in warm water, but the water was made of pure peace. I didn't need to breathe, yet I felt more alive than ever before. All the aches and pains of my 86 years were gone. I was whole. I looked at my hands. They weren't my old wrinkled hands, but they were my hands, full of light and strength. I understood then that I had arrived somewhere real, a place more real than the world I had just left behind. From the heart of the light, a figure walked toward me. This was not the Jesus from the holy cards in my prayer book. His skin was bronze, like a man who had spent his life under a desert sun. His eyes were dark, deep as the universe, and they held all the world's sorrow, yet they sparkled with a love aimed right at me. He wore a simple, seamless robe of the purest white. I tried to stay standing, but my knees gave out. I couldn't speak. I just wept, overcome by a joy so powerful I felt like my soul was breaking open. He looked at me, and he smiled, and then he spoke. "Harold," he said. My name in his voice wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling of being known completely, of being home. All my fears vanished. He reached out a hand, not to pull me up, but as a gesture of comfort. "It is not your time, my son," he said, his voice both gentle and filled with authority. "But there is much you need to see. The flock is in danger and you must carry a warning back." In that moment, I knew my journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. Jesus didn't just speak words to me, he made me a witness to the truth. The light around us seemed to bend and shift, and suddenly I was no longer standing before him. I was looking down into a dark, ornate room in the Vatican. I saw men dressed in the crimson robes of cardinals, their faces in shadow, meeting in secret. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Jesus allowed me to feel what was in their hearts. It was a coldness that chilled me to my soul, a chilling mix of greed, raw jealousy, and a desperate hunger for power. The scene then dissolved and reformed. Now I saw Pope Leo XIV, a man I only knew from pictures, walking through a grand public hall filled with people. He was smiling, greeting them. From the crowd, another man in clerical robes stepped forward. Jesus focused my vision, pushing it past the cloth, right to the man's hand. I saw the cold, dark metal of a pistol. "They will use one of their own," Jesus said, his voice filled with a divine sorrow. "They will try to make it look like the act of a madman, but the plot is born from the heart of the institution itself." I felt a wave of horror wash over me. A plot from within his own church? I looked at Jesus, my soul screaming the question, why? Why do they hate him so much? Instead of answering with words, he showed me. The vision shifted again, away from the violence and the plotting. He took me to a small bare room. There was nothing in it but a simple wooden crucifix on the wall. And there, on his knees, was Pope Leo. He wasn't giving a speech or signing decrees. He was weeping, his shoulders shaking as he prayed for the world. "This is his power, Harold," Jesus said softly, his voice resonating with truth. "Not his public statements or his diplomacy. It is this, his hidden life of prayer. He is pulling down strongholds in the spirit, and the darkness that has taken root in his own house cannot bear the light. That is why they must try to silence him." I have to pause here and ask you, can you feel the weight of that? If this message is speaking to your heart, please press the like button and tell me in the comments, do you believe true power is found in secret prayer? In that one moment, Jesus showed me everything. He showed me the poison of men who crave power and the purity of a man who only craved God. He revealed a secret war being fought not in the news, but on knees in a hidden room. I finally understood the words from the Gospel of Matthew, that nothing concealed will remain hidden. I thought this was the most shocking thing I could possibly see, a plot to kill the Holy Father. But that was only the beginning. What Jesus showed me next about what would happen after the attack was what made me fall to my knees a second time. I saw that weeping man on his knees, and I finally understood. The men in the secret rooms weren't afraid of his policies or his power. They were terrified of his prayers. I looked at Jesus, my heart full of questions, and he knew. He didn't have to ask. "They want a church that serves the world, Harold," he said, his voice resonating with a holy sadness. "This man wants a church that serves me. His prayers are tearing down walls they have spent centuries building. The darkness cannot stand it, so it will try to extinguish the light with a single violent act." The vision of the small room dissolved, and I was back in that grand hall. I saw it happen. I saw the flash from the gun, heard the screams of the crowd. I saw Pope Leo fall, and the sight of it broke my heart. I thought I was witnessing his death. I cried out, a silent scream from my soul. But Jesus put a hand on my shoulder, a touch that was both firm and comforting. "He will not die," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a trumpet. "His work is not yet finished. But watch what happens next. Their greatest weapon will become their greatest defeat." And then Jesus showed me the aftermath. I saw a vision of the whole world, every television screen, every phone, every computer, all showing the same image. In the moments after the attack, as the Pope lay wounded, a light began to glow around him. It wasn't a camera flash. It was a living, breathing presence of the Holy Spirit, visible to every camera. I saw hardened news anchors in their studios suddenly start weeping. I saw people in bars and offices around the globe fall to their knees in awe and fear. The attack meant to silence God's man became the trigger for a global awakening. That vision faded, and Jesus showed me one last thing. It was the most powerful, the most terrifying, and the most hopeful thing I saw. I saw Pope Leo XIV years later. He was older, and I could see the faint trace of a scar on his temple, but his eyes were full of fire. He was not in Rome. He was standing in Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives, surrounded by leaders from many nations. He wasn't there as a ruler or a politician. He was there as a humble pilgrim, a servant bringing a message of peace that the world was not ready for. There, on that holy mountain, I watched him make a public declaration. Jesus didn't let me hear the exact words, but I felt their power. It was a profound act of healing and truth, an acknowledgement of God's eternal covenant with Israel and of Jesus as their long-awaited Messiah, spoken in a way no pope had ever dared. As he spoke, I felt the world shift on its axis. Jesus then leaned close to me and said, "This act of humility and truth will be the final tripwire. It will align events on earth with the timeline of heaven and accelerate the prophecies that must be fulfilled before my return." That was too much for me. The weight of it all, the plot, the miracle, the final prophecy, it crushed me. I fell to my knees again in that holy light, but this time it wasn't from joy. It was from the sheer, overwhelming terror and awe of what I had been shown. I covered my face and wept, unable to bear the sight of what was coming. I was just a carpenter. This was too much. Jesus let me weep for a moment, and then I heard his voice one last time before the visions ended. He didn't sound sad anymore. He sounded like a king. Jesus looked at me one last time, his eyes burning with a love and authority that was terrifying and beautiful. "Go back, Harold," he commanded, his voice echoing not with a suggestion, but a divine order. "Tell them what you have seen. Tell them to pray for this man. Tell them not to fear, but to prepare. You are my witness." I begged him, "No, Lord, please, let me stay here with you. I'm just an old carpenter. Who will ever believe me? Why did you choose me?" He looked at me with infinite patience. "Because you are a simple man, they will know this message is not from you, but from me." The light began to fade, and I felt a violent, tearing pull, like my soul was being ripped away from home. The peace I had known was instantly gone, replaced by an agonizing crash back into my body. The first thing I felt was an explosion of pain as the defibrillator paddles shocked my chest. I gasped, a raw, ragged breath that felt like breathing fire. The cold of the room, the weight of my own limbs, the shouting voices of the paramedics, it all came rushing back in a chaotic wave. I had forgotten what it felt like to be trapped in flesh, and the shock of it was almost unbearable. I forced my eyes open and saw the stunned faces of the paramedics looking down at me as if they'd seen a ghost. And then I saw my Eleanor. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with a disbelief that was slowly turning into a miracle. I tried to speak, to tell her where I'd been, to tell her I had just seen Jesus. But all that came out was a dry, hoarse whisper, a sound that was barely human. One of the medics leaned in close. "Easy there, sir," he said, his voice shaking a little. "You gave us all quite a scare. Welcome back." A few days later, in the quiet of the hospital room, I tried to tell Eleanor everything. I held her hand, and with all the strength I had, I told her about the light, about the visions, about the warning Jesus had given me for the Pope. She listened so patiently, her eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, she squeezed my hand, brought it to her lips, and kissed it. "Oh, Harold," she whispered, her voice thick with love and concern. "You've been through such a trauma. Just rest now. We'll talk when you're stronger." I realized then that returning to my body was only the first painful step of my mission. My wife Eleanor's loving dismissal was just the beginning. My own children, the ones I raised to trust in God, looked at me with such pity in their eyes. They arranged for a doctor to visit, a kind man who spoke gently about post-traumatic visions and the tricks a mind can play when it's starved of oxygen. I even went to my parish priest, a good man I've known for 20 years. He listened patiently, patted my hand, and suggested I focus on my recovery. He said my experience was beautiful, but that it was a private gift, not a public warning. Everyone I trusted was telling me that the most real thing that ever happened to me was a dream. But it was more than just disbelief. When I tried to record what I saw, strange things happened. My grandson's new digital recorder would only capture a low, humming static, like angry insects. I tried to write it all down, but a crippling pain I'd never had before would suddenly seize my hands, making it impossible to hold a pen. At night, I was tormented by nightmares. Not of death, but of shadowy figures who would stand at the foot of my bed, whispering that if I spoke, I would be called a liar and a fool, and that my family would suffer for my pride. It was a spiritual battle, and I felt I was losing. I was ready to give up. The fear and the loneliness were a heavy blanket. One evening, sitting in that same armchair, I told God I couldn't do it. "I'm just a carpenter," I prayed. "This is too much for me." And in the silence of my heart, I didn't hear a voice, but I felt a memory as real as a touch on my soul. It was the look in Jesus' eyes when he said, "You are my witness." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, a sacred duty. I realized the fear I felt wasn't from God. It was the enemy's last, desperate attempt to bury the truth he wanted me to share. So why am I here now telling you this? Because the fight to keep me quiet proved how vital this message is. Think about it. Why would dark forces work so hard to silence the ramblings of a confused old man? They wouldn't. They fought me because they are terrified of the truth Jesus revealed. They fought me because they are terrified of you hearing it. The resistance I faced was my final confirmation. This message isn't just my story. It's a warning from the throne of heaven, and it was meant to find its way directly to you, right at this very moment. So I am here now, telling you all of this, because I realized this message wasn't just for me. Jesus sent me back for you. He showed me the darkness hiding within his own church, the plot against a good and holy man, Pope Leo XIV. And he showed me why they fear him. Not for his political power, but for the raw, untamed power of his secret prayers. If you feel lost, confused by the chaos you see in the world, this is what you must understand. The most important battles are spiritual, and they are being won on knees in hidden rooms by humble servants of God. And if you feel hopeless, if you look at the news and see only advancing darkness, then listen closely to what Jesus showed me next. He revealed that the enemy's greatest weapon will become God's greatest victory. That moment of intended violence will be transformed into a global spiritual awakening, a visible manifestation of the Holy Spirit that no camera can miss and no cynic can deny. He told me to tell you, specifically, not to fear when you see this happen. It is a sign that God is exposing what has been hidden, and his light is about to break through the shadows. For those of you who feel it deep in your bones, that sense that we are standing on the edge of something immense, Jesus confirmed it for you. He showed me that humble servant of God, Pope Leo, standing not in Rome, but on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. He showed me how one profound act of truth and humility there will be the final tripwire for prophecy. So this is the simple, practical message he gave me for you. Pray for this man. Watch Jerusalem. And above all, prepare your own heart, because the time is shorter than any of us can imagine. My time is short. I'm 86, and I've already been to the other side once. I don't know how many days I have left, but I will use every one to deliver this message. If you know someone who feels lost or afraid and needs to hear this warning from Jesus, please share this video with them right now and subscribe for more truths from those who have seen the other side. I have told you what I saw. What you do now is between you and God. Jesus didn't just show me a gun aimed at a pope. He sent me back to show you where to aim your prayers.